Hi, my name is Don Endriss, and I ran for U.S. Congress twice. Over the next few videos, I want to share my thoughts on how the tech party could remove control freaks from Congress. And I mean both sides of the aisle, Republicans and Democrats. Laugh all you want, but there is a way to do this without protesting, without arguing, without fighting, without having a social war. The tech party. The tech party could fix our government. Why aren't we using technology to connect the people directly into the government's decision-making process? Because the last 50 years have taught us that politicians are no smarter than the rest of us. You ever hear that saying, fake it till you make it? Well, that's what politicians do. They fake it. But faking the truth doesn't work for the rest of us. Faking it in the real world makes everything worse. We all know the silent majority could provide better alternative decisions in weeks or months instead of years and decades. And when the silent majority makes a decision, it will be supported by society, the people that are going to live under that new law. We need to improve the communication process between the people and Congress, especially when dealing with national issues. Because as non-essential citizens lose everything, control freak politicians and their supporters are getting richer. The old decision-making system does not work. It never did. Ask your parents. Ask your grandparents. I mean, we all see it. Every national issue becomes a new industry, and our government leaders and their supporters seem to find ways to drag their feet, to ignore the solutions proposed by the silent majority. Our government has become organized crime. You see, the reason they drag their feet is because politicians need time to figure out how to turn tragedy into control opportunities. Control opportunities that create revenue streams. Revenue streams that their supporters and their supporters' families control. And when the money begins to flow out of some tragedy, the collectors of wealth take a portion of those profits and pour that money right back into their politician's next campaign. Maybe have a corner office ready for them just in case the scheme turns into a career-ending scandal. That's what I see. And it happens when both sides, Republicans and Democrats, every new election brings another corrupt government. Every election for hundreds of years. But it doesn't have to be this way. We could end government corruption in the very next election. We need to use technology for the good of the people. The people need access into our government's decision-making process. That is the whole purpose of having a U.S. Congress, both the House and the Senate. Direct representative democracy gives the power directly to the people. No more arguing with politicians. No more hoping, wishing, and praying that they will do what we want, because the way the tech party sees it, when the people living in South Florida agree with the people in Alaska, and the people in Alaska agree with the people along Jersey Shore, and they agree with the people living in the Arizona desert and everywhere else, then that's how the government should move forward. The government is supposed to be doing what the people want. And it's time for real change, and we need to get ready fast because the next what are we going to do moment is coming. It's time to create a decision-making system that includes the people. A decision-making system that protects us from the predators of society who hunger for power and authority. That is why I say without technology, democracy is doomed. Because 1 in 10 people, regardless of a person's race, gender, or wealth, 1 in 10 people is willing to harass, cheat, and lie to control the other 9. So let us agree to start this conversation off by talking about life. Life as we really know it, and how for centuries 9 out of 10 people have always been ruled by control freaks. So let's begin a conversation about these control freaks and the methods they use to create fear and anxiety. Let's examine how the most corrupt predators seem to leverage themselves into positions of authority. And if you can agree with my opinion of the problem, I believe you will understand how the tech party could level the playing field in our government. So here's what I think about life. I think life is a test. I know I am experiencing something. I know thought is real. And when I close my eyes, I don't feel alone. I see others, and we are all here together, and the great majority of us, regardless of race, gender, or wealth, seem to have similar methods for determining when a person has crossed the edge of some social line. Let's look at this situation with Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein, 2 monsters with a history of clinking glasses amongst the most powerful, politically connected people on earth. Government agencies, years, maybe decades of sleazy pictures and videos. God knows what else they found. Everyone I talk to thinks the government should stop investigating things like Trump, Hillary, the war on drugs, and from this day forward, begin using those resources to start releasing the Epstein Island pictures. And the very first pictures that the silent majority wants released should be of anyone who currently holds a public office. There won't be any surprises. We all know that career politicians have no morals. But what about their hand-selected security escorts? How moral of an officer would you want around you when you're heading to Epstein Island for the weekend? Are we supposed to believe that when top government officials, foreign dignitaries, or royalty stayed there, that their official U.S. security detail took the weekend off? Got any pictures of somebody with a badge holding a drink in one hand and a teenage girl in the other? What about the mile-high plane rides on the Lolita Express? Why is that story being buried? That's what most people want to know. That's all. I mean, if the pictures are too shocking to be released to the public, then just show us the faces of the adults who were naked in the room. Set up a web page, call them persons of interest. You know, like when a poor neighborhood has a predator, how quickly their picture gets into the nightly news. Why aren't we doing this with these rich and powerful predators? I mean, the pictures released today might save a child tomorrow. That is what the silent majority wants. The tech party could make that happen. I mean, no one expects charges to be brought up against the rich and powerful. The law never seems to apply to the elite. No one will be shocked by the list of names, because every day our news is filled with outrageous stories. Another high-ranking public official gets caught doing something stupid every day. Crooked politicians and their elite buddies walking around the community with their chest in the air, proclaiming into television cameras that they know what's best for all of us. When was the last time you heard about a scandal and you thought to yourself, that's impossible. There's no one who could ever be that dishonest? When was the last time? When was the last time you were shocked by a scandal? And this awareness is the same at every level. Every level of society. No one is surprised by anything, and why should they be? I mean, we all know some guy who is cheating on his wife. And since it takes two to tango, I bet that guy knows the woman who's cheating on her husband. Their friends, family, co-workers, people know what's going on. And all the snooping neighbors and office spies, they know who each of the cheaters are. And always observing the nosy neighbors and nosy co-workers are the control freaks. And control freaks haven't changed for thousands of years. When a control freak meets a nosy person, they begin to use that nosy person as a tool for gathering information. Control freaks whisper the names of people they want watched into the ears of nosy people. Neither of them could mind their own business to save their lives. Gossip and slander, that is what helps them to find each other. And it works that way in neighborhoods, in companies, and in the government. After that, every time the nosy person has new information, they know that someone is waiting for them, and there will be an exchange of some sort. Regardless of race, gender, or wealth, 1 in 10 people has no respect for your privacy. These people who are always trying to involve themselves into the lives of others who want nothing to do with them. You know who I am talking about. Those people who always seem to be flying drones, walking their dogs, hanging around the water cooler, standing behind bushes and fences at night. These social predators who set up cameras to film people they don't get along with. Is this the new normal? Perverts and spies sitting in rooms watching hidden camera TV shots on big screens? Who thinks that's normal? Today, companies are on the lookout for spies. Everything is security. Maybe your new employee is a spy working for the competition, studying your psychological profile so that their team can uncover the easiest way to sabotage you and your business. Who thinks it's normal to set up a hidden camera, to record someone else's private conversations, to send spies into a competitor's business or home, to figure out some kind of deep sabotage? Who thinks that's normal? Control freaks. Control freak predators think that's normal. Have you ever seen a group try to destroy someone? Well, if the attack fails, you notice how they try to make friends with the victim's friends, always polite and cheerful, explaining how everything is just a big misunderstanding. That is how it works in neighborhoods. That is how it works in companies. And that is how it works in the government. And after they are caught in a failed attack, predators start bringing up the concept of forgiveness, because we've all been taught there's something wrong with people who don't forgive. Well, I say never forgive anyone who tries to destroy you and fails. Think if they were successful in destroying you, they would be knocking at your door, their head bowed down, confessing the whole truth. How many people that screw you in life and won, how many return to come clean about what they did to you? None. It never happens. It's not going to happen. Control freaks only ask for forgiveness when their attack fails, when they get caught. Forgiveness, worry, fear, anxiety, and false concerns, these are weapons to control freaks. And future social predators, when they attack, they will be screaming for help while kicking and punching their victim. It messes with your natural ability to make sense of any sudden situations. It is your nature being used against you. It causes momentary confusion. It is literally a DDoS attack on humans. Hearing someone scream for help puts you into rescue mode. But how do you save someone from you while they are attacking you? They take the victim's position, and that creates the confusion. And by the time you figure out somebody is messing with you, the harassment is over, And they're walking away with a smile, half waving goodbye. See you tomorrow. And what do you get? A knot in your stomach. Mission accomplished. And if their first wave doesn't persuade you to change your mind and start going along with what your predators desire, they will simply organize their efforts and harass someone as a team. Death by 1,000 cuts. Because it isn't illegal to put someone into a toxic mental state of fight or flight and then laugh at them for complaining, calling them crazy. Remember being taught to say sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me? Well, psychologists have learned that with the right combination of words, you can put a person into a mental state of fight or flight. And if that happens enough times, the toxins produced from the stomach knots will physically wear a person down. This is the trick of all rulers. For thousands of years, control freaks know that stomach knots are lasting mental markers. It is what kept these rulers in power when they weren't around. Just the memory of what happened to someone else who challenged corrupt power, it immediately causes a little knot in the stomach. And that's enough to sit most people back down. Control Freaks 101. And today's social predators are well rehearsed for any law enforcement questions. Plausible deniability. Plausible deniability. It also helps the people who saw what happened. Because it's hard to watch another person being socially violated. Because if that tormented person didn't do anything, then everyone watching knows they could be next. And that is what helps witnesses to close their eyes and dance to the rhythm of the crowd. Because guess what happens to the people who don't step in time with the person beating the drum? Guess what happens to them? That is why we hear people say things like, that person must have done something wrong. There has to be a reason why that person is being attacked. Well, there is a reason, and it's the same reason your parents, your grandparents, and all your ancestors down the line have struggled during their times in society. 1 in 10 people, regardless of their race, gender, or wealth, 1 in 10 people are willing to harass, cheat, and lie to control the other 9. 1 in 10 people is planning a surprise for someone today, and when the big surprise happens, only the control freak will be smiling. Wish there was a way to beat them? Well, there is. And it's easier than you think. The Tech Party. I bet when psychology was invented back in the late 1800s, their first goal was to figure out how to deal with the control freaks within their own society. When I was young, I thought people who went into psychology were like doctors. Those people who wanted to help others, to heal. The good people like Mother Teresa. Today, people are getting a degree in psychology to help strengthen their sales career. There's just something wrong with that sentence. I know during the Industrial Revolution, witchcraft and superstition began to die out. And that was right around the same time psychology and metaphysics were catching on. And one book seemed to explain it all. The book was called As a Man Thinketh. I highly recommend it. And it basically said that people who are honest with themselves live happier lives. And happier people are better at controlling their own thoughts. But progress always builds 2 roads. One for personal improvement and the other for personal profit. But either way, I think the world started to change for the worse around the 1950s. That's when people started mapping out thought. It was possible to plan an experience for someone and then produce a predictable reaction. Thinkers began working on something called transactional analysis. And instead of it being used to help society better understand how we interact with one another, I think it became a blueprint for some professions. It announced that there were weak spots in how normal people think. No one was surprised when the advertising companies and their sales teams began to invent ways of exploiting these weak spots. Companies started to think about how they could control the thoughts of their customers and how to use the buyer's emotions against themselves. Companies figured out that if they combined some of these mental tricks into their advertising, they could lower the quality of their product or service and still charge the same price. And that meant more profit. Sell. That's all it was about. That's my opinion. And around 20 years ago when I was in university, the big thing was industrial organizational psychology, IO. And IO said instead of just focusing the control over the customer, why not focus the control over the customers and the employees? These new kinds of psychologists began working for companies, identifying and creating predictable moments. Predictable moments that were occurring along the path of their company's sales process. From the moment you walked through their door till the time you departed, nothing was left for chance. And these 20-year-old IO principles have become razor sharp today. And soon every employee will be sporting a hearing aid, and the words coming out of their mouth will be from someone in another room. Someone who's watching and analyzing you. Oh yeah, and also recording you without you knowing it. Maybe you already got a nickname, a desktop folder. I mean, will grocery store employees in security rooms start using coworkers to create staged encounters for the customers they don't like? Is that going to be the next new normal? The government manufacturing situations so they can arrest someone they disagree with? Maybe one day they will hire your neighbors as informants to cause struggles for you, violate your privacy, get you to scream and yell in the direction of some hidden camera. Entrapment. It is easy to create and manufacture the appearance of crime, especially if the control freak with the badge doesn't like somebody. And some government witnesses are paid. Some just have a score to settle. But how can citizens protect themselves in the future? Who is watching these watches? Today, the person the government falsely points their finger at, tomorrow might be you. I mean, I am old, so good luck with those kinds of official predators. That world is coming faster than you think. We're either going to tell them what to do, or the elite are going to continue telling us what to do. That's just what I see happening. But in more recent years, the focus has moved to something called social psychology. And my description of social psychology is this: it is the art of controlling society's behavior without their approval. First, they wanted to control the buyer, and they wanted to control both the buyer and the employee. And now they want to control the buyer, the employee, and everyone else in society. Today, some people earn a living from studying and analyzing the routines and habits of other people, to observe their pathways for weak spots. That's how superstition and witchcraft worked for hundreds of years. Witchcraft is just over-harassing someone's senses. 300 years ago, witches and warlocks would spray stinky stuff around someone's shack, mess with their crops, throw stuff in their well, anything to overwhelm their victim's senses, put a knot in their stomach. I'm not saying that social psychology is a degree in witchcraft. I'm betting most people who get a degree in social psychology either go into sales, community service, or politics. What I am saying is just like every other calling in life, regardless of a person's race, gender, or wealth, 1 in 10 people wants to control you. Have you ever met someone for the first time and they immediately start busting your chops? You know to see what you are made of. That is how control freaks start things out. And that is how your relationship will always be with them. They are in charge. They ask the questions. You need to grow thicker skin. Have you ever noticed in life that when people are intentionally messing with you, you start to make silly mistakes? That's because when a person becomes distracted, that distraction pulls their mind away from focusing on what they should be doing. Have you ever noticed that when someone has become painfully distracted because of many bad things suddenly happening in their life, how they make bigger mistakes, let their guard down, start hanging around with the wrong kind of people? And when a person can't stop their harassers, that person's judgment begins to spiral and swirl. The gravity of their new thoughts pulls them out of their normal daily orbit. And mistakes will happen. And control freaks know that little mistakes add up. If the attack doesn't get you, the distraction caused by the event might start walking you down the wrong path. And these social traps aren't created to just interrupt the person's day. They want to infuriate the victim. The wounded person knows they've been violated. Torment any mind long enough and the body becomes sick. Have you ever witnessed the end of a heated argument between two people? Ever hear one of the people say that they felt like they had a knot in their stomach? Social predators want you to feel those knots. And if orchestrated attacks happen faster than the body's ability to untie these stomach knots, because it's not easy for the body to remove these water-soluble toxins being produced by the stomach, over time the attacked person will become physically worn down and confused. That is Witchcraft 101. Worry and fear. This is what opens the door to disease. And all politicians quickly learn that worry and fear keeps the people weak. And weak people become confused. And then it doesn't take much to push confused people into an argument. And before anyone has time to think, everything turns upside down. Nothing seems to make sense. And then suddenly, the government needs to step in. Step into a situation they created to gain further control over you. Direct representative democracy would give the silent majority a voice. Let's get rid of these control freak politicians. They all seem to lie about everything that is happening. Is it a surprise that today you can read books on how to train people like dogs? What kind of parent would use these methods to raise children? These books teach people how to deceive, mislead, and lie. And those traits are considered signs of superior intelligence to predators. Do these people really believe in freedom? Do they really believe in equality? And now everything's captured on video. Today it's all about ambush video. And these videos always start out with some person who had no intentions of getting into a confrontation. These people are just walking their daily path when they suddenly find one or more harassers waiting for them. A group of people who've been planning for the forced circumstances that the target suddenly and unexpectedly finds themselves a part of. It's not unusual to see a member of the ambush team waiting towards the side, usually by the exit, getting in their last few insults, hoping to score a great outrage shot, because no ambush video is complete without the most important part, the victim's toxic rage. And 9 out of 10 people understand completely why the target is yelling and upset. And 9 out of 10 people who watch these ambush videos knows exactly what's going on. And they pray it doesn't happen to them or their loved ones. And if someone made a video of me cursing and yelling, well, those in heaven would get to see me in real life, right before all the commotion started. And I bet, right before my ambush, and I've had quite a few, I would be minding my own business, smiling and enjoying the plans of my day. And that's why more and more people are wondering about these control freaks who set up these circumstances to make these kinds of videos. It's simple human nature that if you create a toxic situation for someone, they are going to become toxic and give you a toxic response. It is your human nature being used against you. And psychology also teaches that people who are sick to their stomach usually won't stand up to fight. These ambush videos also cause anyone watching the video to get stomach knots, and it's kind of like a mental punch. Anybody who sees what happened. I think my thoughts on stomach knots are a little too much. You ever hear something called road rage? Which way does the person causing the road rage incident want to see you drive away? Smiling or cursing? We all know the driver in the left lane doing 55 is just trolling for trouble. And if you got up next to them and you yelled for them to get out of the way, you probably got the two-hand flash. Speed limit's 55. And if you're like 9 out of 10 people, human nature took over and you yelled back something about them blocking the passing lane. Do you remember the driver's eyes staring straight at you? Do you remember watching their smile grow, laughing and puffing air as they raised up their middle finger? 1 in 10 people thinks it's okay for them to mess with you. Think about your own neighborhood. Have you ever lived in a small apartment building? If you did, you know that 9 out of 10 people are pretty much normal. But there's usually one person in the building who's always spreading rumors and starting trouble for some person that they don't like, poisoning their name to create doubt, false concerns. The other residents are aware of the problems this troublemaker enjoys creating, so they tolerate the troublemaker's remarks in passing. It helps the silent majority to get by without incident. The troublemaker gets the other residents to recognize, almost as if with unspoken words, that as long as the rest of you stay silent about what's happening, nobody else will have a problem. 1 in 10 people, regardless of their race, age, gender, wealth, profession, or political affiliation, 1 in 10 people wants to control you. If you ever lived in a bigger apartment building, you know that the regular 9 out of 10 people are still normal, but when those 1 out of 10 troublemakers start finding each other, well, that's when the rest of the building begins to worry. Together, these rabble-rousers justify each other's empty lives, and from that point forward, if you have a problem with one of them, you suddenly have a problem with all of them. And I know you've all heard it before. The only thing necessary for evil to exist is for good people to remain silent. But most people recognize that when dealing with aggressive groups, silence is not violence, but rather silence is safety from violence. The silent majority has always tried to avoid violence. That is why they are silent. But what if the silent majority used technology to take back social power from the 1 in 10s? What if the silent majority used technology to construct laws? Create social policies that a supermajority of the population would be willing to support? We have to start dealing with the power these 1 in 10s have. All citizens need to be connected into the decision-making process. The tech party could make that happen. You would never hear another politician say they can't figure out what the people want. We need to get rid of these two-faced politicians who enjoy watching their rivals suffer. And the winners from both sides always seem to look for ways to punish the losers. These politicians who create struggles for others, struggles that they themselves could never, ever endure. Sometimes I wonder if politics is really just a lying contest. The best liar with the best excuse, that's who gets first place these days. But there is one kind of liar that is the most dangerous of them all. And there's only one way to stop them. The tech party. Have you ever met a half-truther? Those people who mix and combine their lies into the truth, all while maintaining a trustworthy, warm facial expression. In Staten Island, we call them smiling knives. Now, a person doesn't need to be smart to lie. Dumb people can mislead and deceive just as convincingly as smart people. And Napoleon Hill correctly explains it. A half-truth is more dangerous than an outright lie, because the half-truth part is capable of deceiving someone into thinking that the whole of the story is true. And when the lie is exposed, the half-truther clings to the half-truth part. Their escape plan has already been rehearsed. You see them standing in a crowd, a sign that strongly defends the half-truth position, all while backpedaling and denying any association to the scandalous part. That's just how organized politics works. That's why we hear control freaks say things like, "Oh, you must have misinterpreted what I said. Please forgive me if I misspoke." Both sides do it, Republicans and Democrats. They're both experts at double talking. And if the news cameras show up, the liars know with the right combination of words, they're going to get away with their scheme. And they usually have their own witnesses who plead for forgiveness. I call it the control freak coin toss. Heads they win, tails they have to apologize for their behavior. And if they lose, they use whatever they've learned from the experience to go right back after what they want, no matter how much the people scream for them to stop. Direct representative democracy ends government corruption. We could remove these social predators from Congress in one election. And it's hard to tell who a social predator is these days. Control freaks have one opinion in private and a different opinion in public. That is how they were raised. They do share one characteristic, one trait, and it only becomes obvious after getting to know them. Control freaks find great pleasure in the discomfort of others. Transparency could help to sift them out, but predators don't give information. They gather it to share with other predators. Social predators know the places where people go to meet behind closed doors. And these backroom people use their backroom thoughts to teach others how to get out of any jams they might have with the law. To learn how to repair and solve things with one hand while picking their target's pocket with the other. They know what they are doing is immoral and borderline dishonest, but they have become experts at skating the edge of the law. But these edges don't want you to look at them, so they point their finger up the ladder towards the people they consider worse. Those people whose total deal is to steal. I'm talking about street corner hustlers. Those people who sell junk stocks. Fast-talking hucksters who flim-flam super scam all day long. And those thieves know all the people who buy and resell stolen stuff. And they know the drug dealers. And the drug dealers know the owners of pain pill clinics. But pain pill doctors only play the system. They point their fingers up the ladder of crime towards the real problem with medicine. The doctors who play the patients, experts at over-exaggerating medical conditions. They use anxiety to sell unnecessary therapies and surgeries. More anxiety clears the path to a bigger bill, especially if you've got greater health insurance. I bet every doctor who graduated from doctor school knows somebody who shouldn't be a doctor. And you see it in every occupation. Engine mechanics, roofers, lawyers, salespeople, white collar, blue collar, and maybe even preachers. When some of them speak with a prospect, they are closely detecting, watching for signs of body tension. 1 in 10 people trying to sell you their product or service is going to tell you something is worse than it really is. Just like when politicians make things sound worse than they really are. You see, the more fear a politician is able to inject or detect from a situation, the lower the tendency becomes for society to complain about the cost of the bill. And most of these con artists, government contractors, emergency fraudsters, these parasites are on a first-name basis with crooked liability lawyers. And these crooked lawyers work to get their cases in front of judges they know. Judges who are willing to see through a blind eye. And no one has to tell the poor that our courts are filled with injustice. There is no justice in our courts without money. Drug possession charges destroyed lives. If you couldn't afford to hire your own lawyer, you were forced to take a plea deal. And I don't remember any public outcry needing a war on drugs. The only people making a stink about it were the politicians in Washington and the local prosecutors trying to make a name for themselves. The crueler the prosecutor meant the more they cared about society. Who thinks it's normal to handcuff and arrest people for smoking pot in their home? Control freaks. Control freaks were having a nationwide contest to see who could be the toughest and cruelest. Individual prosecutors were responsible for destroying thousands of people, thousands of families. Millions were affected nationwide. There were easy arrests and easy prosecutions. No one seemed to care about the suffering that was being caused. Parents watching their children's lives being destroyed. God knows how many people went to an early grave from the stress of injustice. Prosecutors were creating the kind of anxiety in society that gave people those blood-boiling stomach knots. The kind of knots that have caused cancer for centuries. When making laws, the silent majority wants to see who these people are. What the vicious people sat behind these closed-door meetings, deciding that it was okay to create mandatory minimums for victimless crimes. People being sentenced for ridiculous amounts of time. What mind thinks that's normal? But there were also a lot of good people who didn't know what was going on. Back then, people just didn't know what was happening. Imagine being on a jury that convicts a kid on drug charges, and then later you learn that the stupid little thing the kid did carries a 10-year mandatory minimum with no chance of parole. The judge is forced to give that kid the full 10 years. The tech party. The tech party could stop these kinds of laws from moving forward. Murderers, rapists, and armed robbers. Some of these criminals get less than 5 years. Violent criminals are eligible for parole, early release. But this story of injustice doesn't end with the destruction caused by drug possession charges, because the legal system is just as messed up for the cases that actually have victims. And in those courtrooms, the majority of honest judges watch helplessly as the financially powerful use our court system to bury the people they've broken. Today, if a person has been poisoned at work and they've been told they only have 3 years to live, first thing the company insurance lawyer does is put that dying person's case on their 4-year stall, postpone, and delay plan. No one is surprised, and the society shrugs its shoulders, holding palms to the sky. Abnormal becomes normalized. And the privileged elite all clink glasses with their politician friends who seem to get richer and richer, giving back, working for the people. And all who willingly cross lines watch with envy as the leaders of the world build golden castles for their families' future generations. The collectors of wealth crushing anyone standing between them and the forced circumstances they create for profit. Out of the way for the rest of you. I know just because I can see that others are bad does not mean I am good. What about the person who does not want to be connected to those who live corrupt lives? Everyday people who struggle to avoid the social advances of individuals that violate peace, property, and trust. 1 in 10 people who are dishonest still go to church. They throw money in a plate, and somehow, just by attending a worship ceremony, they believe their weekly deeds have become balanced out. Deeds that might have left another person financially injured or literally limping along the side of the road. Some paper money tossed into a plate, and I'm sorry through a screen, and you are forgiven. What kind of energy says this is normal? What message does that send to others who attend these worship ceremonies because they want to be in the peaceful energy of like-minded believers? Where is the church that doesn't fill its collection plates from Korea's sinners? Where is the congregation that is interested in living the word rather than loudly preaching about it? Where are the people who understand that self-love, being truthful with yourself, that is what produces a happier life? I know it's hard to speak the truth. Sometimes it can be dangerous. Everyone knows it's easier to look the other way. Safer to go along and get along and to try to hold on to your beliefs and stand strong. But at what point is it okay to complain? What happens when people stand up and protest the system or protest about the actions of groups that violate accepted social lines? Have you ever gone up against a group, their eyes trying to burn you, for not looking away, for daring not to support their lies? For thousands of years this has been the way. That's what Jesus must have seen. A small corrupt part of society in control and judgment over him. A world filled with people commanding their children to do as they say and not as they do. Generation after generation repeating the same useless sayings to their children. That is what creates a perpetual silent majority. I think the worst saying of all was, if you can't beat them, join them. You remember hearing that one? If you can't beat them, join them. Do any of you remember grade school? Ever been harassed or beaten up? If you were, do you remember the authority figure leisurely stepping in with a smirk on their face, ordering the both of you to knock it off and shake hands? Do you remember the confusion from hearing an adult telling you to knock it off? I mean, you just got harassed or worse, beat up, and now you're being spoken to as a contributor to the problem. If you went to public school, you know that being smarter, being attractive, being dumber, being ugly, having more talent, no talent, nice clothes, old clothes, happy or sad, no one was safe from control freaks. And everyone knew it, from the students to the teachers. And control freaks back then used the same tactics as today as they did centuries ago. Like when the Romans would enter a new city, they would gather up all the people, give a speech, and then drag a person into the center of the crowd, make an example out of one of them. Everyone else instantly felt fear and anxiety. None of the citizens jumped up and said, "But we outnumber you 9-1. We are many, you are just a few." You know why nobody at the gathering stepped up? Because anyone who had the guts to stand up and challenge the corrupt power, well, those people had already been stalked, ambushed, and destroyed. Think I got that wrong? Then you tell me, what happens to people who stand up to corrupt power? Corrupt power in neighborhoods, corrupt power in companies, corrupt power in our government agencies. It's the same thing repeating itself throughout history. Fear equals control. I know it's a long stretch to compare invading Roman armies with schoolyard bullies, but that's what I remember about public school. Keep your head down and your mouth shut, and to do whatever the authority figure tells you to do, without question. And I went to a public school back in the 60s and 70s. And back then, teachers would smack students right out in the open. Nobody had camera phones. When little children graduate from grade school to junior high school, their new junior high school had a disciplinarian. And the controllers of society thought it was necessary for these disciplinarians to be mean and tough. Do you remember the first day of junior high school or high school back in the 60s and 70s? Ever see one of these psychopath disciplinarians marching off the stage during an assembly, going into the audience to find someone to make an example out of? A grown teacher knocking some little kid around and then dragging them onto the stage by their hair. Today that would be national news, but back in the 60s and 70s, they called it tough love. And I know the Catholic school kids remember the nuns with their rulers. All disciplinarians taught the same lesson. Do as you were told or you will be sorry. That's what I remember. But regardless of the reason or method people in power create anxiety and fear to control others, every generation learns that, right or wrong, if you don't do what those in power say, especially corrupt power, you could be next. I mean, after a crowd witnesses a predator violating somebody and getting away with it, from that day forward, the predator has the advantage. An advantage they did not earn by fair play or agreement. And when control freaks have an advantage, they will use and apply this advantage over all. All who fear the consequences from altering their lives by putting up a fight and defending themselves. Because everyone knows that only cowards mess with people who are unwilling or unable to fight back. It's how control freaks gain the advantage. Did you know that gaining an advantage at the expense of another is the cause of all wars? I know grade school was a long time ago, but how is it any different today for adults who are harassed? Today, if an adult wants to press charges against their tormentor, the tormentor also gets to press charges back. An official complaint with your name on the paperwork makes it easier for your attacker to sue you. Ask a cop what happens to people who file a complaint against their social predators. Attackers aren't worried about going to jail. They either have bulletproof lawyers who are expecting the phone call, or they have nothing to lose. Everyone can see there's something wrong with our system. No one should need to know someone in City Hall or law enforcement to receive fair treatment. And if you ever find yourself a target of some corrupt government bureaucrat with a badge, then it's you against the mob. And everyone complains about it. And everyone says we should do something, loudly wishing there was a way to fix it. Well, there is. There is a way to fix it, but it takes 15 months to get everything into place. And if we start moving right now, we could do this in the next election. The tech party. Everything gets cleaned up in Washington when the tech party comes to town. People need an even playing field. We need laws that reflect and protect the wishes of society. Let's use technology to create laws with acceptable penalties. Laws that will be equally applied to all. The point is to connect the people to the decision-making process. One national issue at a time decided by the people. Technology opens the door to direct representative democracy. People ruling the people. That is what all free-thinking citizens have dreamed of since the dawn of time. And in the very next election, we could fix Congress using simple online bulletin boards. Both sides would be able to make their presentations with videos. One video would be by the people who want you to vote yes. The other would be by the people who want you to vote no. And if the people like a little of what one side has to say, and a little of what the other side has to say, and that is how the alternative option will be created and presented by the silent majority. And after all sides have spoken, the people will decide. No more corruption. Crystal clear transparency. The tech party will connect the people directly into the decision-making process. In one election, in the very next election. Our government is broken, just like all the other governments around the world. We have come the closest to achieving freedom for all. And if the 1 in 10s from either side are able to gain permanent control over the use of technology, then democracy is doomed. The American people just need to take that one last step, a step created by technology, connecting the government to the will of the people. And here is my prediction for every form of government around the world. These communist and socialist countries, something has changed. Now there is technology. And every government across the world, regardless of their political system, must recognize that the silent majority in every country is growing tired of corruption in government. And technology gives the silent majority a new voice, a voice that will not remain silent. It is technology that is bridging a new step, helping people from communist countries to visit the ideas of socialism. When this technology helps to bridge a new step, helping people from socialist countries to visit the ideas of freedom. Laugh all you want, but these non-democratic countries are better prepared to incorporate a direct representative system into their governments. They are better prepared than we are. And no matter what country you are from, all citizens are tired of being lied to by politicians. People across the world want to know the facts, and all citizens would like to be included somewhere in the decision-making process. And these non-democratic countries can and do make changes overnight. Technology opened that door. And one day you will see direct representative democracy, direct representative socialism, direct representative communism. And when that day comes, the people of this world will never again be controlled by the 1 in 10s. The people will never go back to arguing with politicians. So that's what I see happening in the future. And I've already shared my thoughts about the past. So let's start talking about right now. Right now in our country, the majority of Americans wish Congress would just do what the people want. To hear the people. The tech party could make that happen. Instead of getting frustrated and yelling at the TV, Americans will simply log in and decide the next national emergency or national issue. Trouble-free online bulletin boards already exist. They've been around for 20 years. They're not fancy, they're not pretty, but they will provide us with a great starting point. And since everything will be open sourced, we have nothing to hide. The goal is to connect the people to the decision-making process. I say let the lobbyists and newsmongers make their case directly to the nation. Society will create the list of possible solutions, and then the people will decide which is the correct path for the nation to take. That is democracy. No one can predict the future. And politicians are no smarter than the rest of us. And this is not about trying to get rid of control freaks who have made mistakes in their lives. Nobody is perfect. We've all done some pretty stupid stuff through our teens and 20s. Life is long. And there's a good chance somewhere in your past you were a 1 in 10 to somebody else. What the tech party wants to do is keep the 1 in 10s from controlling the decision-making process. That sounds reasonable to most people. So if this makes sense to you, then why do we keep believing these newly elected politicians are going to lead us in the right direction? How many more times do you need to see a social issue or a national emergency turn into weeks, months, and years of bellyaching from both sides? The tech party gives the people an immediate voice, two-way communication. Two-way communication. For the first time in human existence, we have the technology to connect the people directly into the decision-making process. No more drunk with power officials ruling the masses, just average people telling the government how they want to live and the government making it so. It's time to start electing regular people to Congress. Let's get rid of these career politicians. We need people in government who are willing to put their feelings aside, to vote the wishes of the people living in their district, the people that voted them into office. Tech party system of direct representative democracy would create true justice for all. And one of the interesting things I've noticed over the years while talking with people about justice is that most people who believe in the afterlife agree on some pretty basic principles. One is that you'll have no future need for clarifying the forced circumstances of any of your experiences. And that's because the energy of your ancestors and the universe have been watching you. And if you believe in the presence of infinite intelligence, or whatever term you use to describe your Almighty, then what you did is recorded within the endless record of time. There's nothing to argue or defend. Also, most worshippers trust that those who live by the ways of their peaceful beliefs will get the seats they deserve, and so will those who don't. A simple system of justice. A simple system of justice that the world already prays for in 100 different languages. And maybe the way that most people envision this kind of sifting and separating that is expected in heaven, regardless of one's race, gender, or wealth, maybe we should start using that concept to sift out control freak politicians from having powerful seats in our government. The tech party just wants to make sure that control freaks don't get a seat near our government's steering wheel. Control freaks are never held responsible. Why? Why are they above the law? Wouldn't it be nice if our laws were equally applied to everyone? I wonder what the world would be like. Because for 35 years I've been a convicted drug criminal. One joint on a TV set in an apartment I shared with 3 other guys right outside of New Orleans. No warrant. They just walked in. One deputy tackled me from behind. The other one cuffed me while resting his body weight on my neck with his knee. I was a New York City boy heading to some Louisiana bayou jail. They were taking me in for further interrogation. The next thing I knew, I was sitting in a chair, handcuffed behind my back, unable to stop his fist from punching me in the stomach. That's what happens when you argue with a cop about the dirty lies they are writing into a report. The public defender told me if I fought the charges, I could go to prison for a couple of years. One joint on a TV set. One joint that wasn't even mine. And I had never been arrested before. And that is what you will see in heaven. Convicted drug criminal for life. Recognized. 35 years later, the people recognize that the war on drugs is really just a war on people, poor people. And as the silent majority yells for the government to shut down this war on drugs and just legalize cannabis, our politicians look the other way. Their loyalties to their donors, like the prison industrial complex. Complain all you want. No one in Washington is listening. And it's not just one side causing all the trouble. Neither party moves the way the greater majority needs things to go. What is the point of voting if both sides are ruled by social predators? I mean, it's almost been a year since the beginning of COVID. And most people are done because our government has bungled this thing from the very beginning. And it seems like what the people would be willing to support is never included into the government's first response. It seemed like the whole country was ready to pull together on 4 simple changes. 4 things that, if implemented, would have quickly dissolved the impact of COVID. And when did doctors and politicians get to decide who and what is essential to a society? The poor had no choice in the shutdown. The shutdown forced some people to sacrifice everything they owned. We were told for the good of our fellow citizens that the shutdown was necessary. But are we all really in this together? How much did the medical community financially sacrifice for their country during COVID? How much did our public servants slash their salaries? Can we talk about those who profited from COVID? Or the people with government jobs who never felt a bump? How many of these people could have survived a year on $2,600? Did we get a national emergency discount from the hospitals? And are any of these hospitals one of the many we always seem to be bailing out? Is it okay for us to notice the people who got rich during this national emergency? Are we allowed to observe how close they are to our government's steering wheel? Wish you could get the answers to those thoughts? The tech party could make that happen. Our government needs to hear the people because rich and powerful politicians have no connection to the average citizens in this country. You can't understand the problems of the poor if everyone in your neighborhood is super rich. Our country is filled with honest, hard-working poor people. And some of these people will never earn $1 million in their lifetime. And these people are watching our government spending trillions with no input from the people. Trillions of dollars. Do you know how much a trillion is? It's 1,000,000 times 1,000,000. I know that might sound wrong, but it's right. 1,000,000 times 1,000,000. That's an incredible amount of money. And people are getting rich from national emergencies. This is the way our political system will continue to dysfunction. That is, until the day the tech party comes to town. Forced to do as we were told. The people who were labeled as non-essential were ordered to make great sacrifices. And a lot of people are losing it all. For them, there will be no rebuild. COVID is making people realize that during national emergencies, citizens need to be directly connected to the decision-making process. Because if we're not connected, we have no voice. We have no power. The old system does not work. It never did. Ask your parents. Ask your grandparents. Sending a fax is useless. Mailing them a letter. Calling them to leave a message. Town hall meetings. None of these things work for the average person. But for the 1 in 10s, all the doors open. There is no waiting for people with money or social influence. Don't you wish you had the same level of access and influence as the 1 in 10s? The tech party could make that happen. Direct representative democracy would have given the people the ability to quickly discuss all the facts during this COVID emergency. And we could have put all the options on the table. And then we could have agreed on a plan in weeks. And then instructed our representatives on how society wants the nation to move forward. With the tech party, we could have quickly de-escalated this COVID situation or anything else that life throws at us in the future. In the first few weeks of COVID, we could have put together the 4 things the silent majority already supported. The first thing was, if you feel sick, stay home. Second was, if you're worried about getting or making others sick, wear a mask. Third was, if you see someone wearing a mask, social distance. And fourth, to help the elderly and high-risk patients to better self-isolate. Those are the 4 things everyone agreed with since last year. These 4 things sound reasonable to most people. Something the large majority of Americans could and would have supported from the very beginning. But the sad reality is that society has become conditioned to first anticipate being dragged through insanity. We will go through years and decades of madness before our public policy arrives to the exact spot where the silent majority has been waiting and willing to cooperate. It's time to connect the people to the decision-making process. It's time to level the playing field with these control-freak politicians who seem to run forever. Because soon enough, this COVID disaster will be in the rearview mirror, and the society continues moving down the road, getting closer and closer to that mysterious turn up ahead. As we finally get around that last corner and keep moving into the future, we are going to find ourselves in another "what are we going to do" situation. And when that happens, because something new always happens, we want our government to quickly answer the needs and concerns of the people. If the government has to step in and decide a national issue or emergency, it is time to let those decisions come from the people. The tech party Let the people rule the people. I estimate it will take $50 million to make this happen in 2022, and it would have to happen quick. I will put a link in the description for those who want to help me give this thing a go. 50 million before the 4th of July 2021, and we will have 500 people ready to go 3 months before the next election. 50 million. That's what it would take for the Tech Party to help organize, coordinate, and set up 435 independent campaigns nationwide. We would be going after every seat in Congress in the very next election. But we ain't stopping there. We're also going after the 34 seats that are up for grabs in the U.S. Senate. This funding would also give us a dedicated team of 30 people working to create and build our Tech Party platform. That is the goal. We have to plant that seed now, quietly growing in the background. We don't have to explain ourselves. We don't have to protest. We don't have to argue. When the election comes, the people will cheer for a new option. And with your financial support, we will be ready. And I've run in 2 elections before, and it's not that complicated. It's not as hard as people are led to believe. And it's the fear of the unknown that keeps most people from challenging the system. My parents are gone. I am not married, and I have no children. If you support this movement, I won't let you down. I will get this done. You can count on me. For the first time in history, we could transfer the decision-making power directly to the people. The Tech Party. The Tech Party could make that happen. For more information about direct representative democracy, stop by thetechparty.com and download the free PDF. This is one of my original limited edition neighborhood campaign books from back in the day. Good luck trying to find one of these. I hope you enjoyed watching my video, and God bless those of you who assist in the defense of freedom wherever you live on this planet. Thank you. And now I'm going back to practicing my trumpet. Don Endriss out.